This is the Bringing Business to Retail podcast, and today I'm going to share with you all about how copycats affect me and what I do to deal with them.
Welcome to the Bringing Business to Retail podcast on SelenaKnight.com. Stay ahead of the competition by opening your doors to business experts so you can learn, grow, and be inspired. Passionate about bringing business strategies to independent retailers, please welcome your host, Selena Knight.
Hey there, and welcome to this solo episode where I'm getting open and personal and diving into something that seriously can affect me in my business, and that is dealing with copycats. Now, have I ever told you the story about how I accidentally found someone copying my whole business? Not just a little part of it, but my whole business. Well, one day I received a phone call from a friend, and she had accidentally stumbled. Honestly, this was all just a series of coincidences linked together. So this friend of mine had accidentally stumbled across a website that was a complete copy of mine. It had a different design, but all the products were the same, the text was the same, everything was the same. And like I said, this was a true twist of fate. It's just a whole bunch of random occurrences that lined up for me to even know about this, because my friend happened to be getting some family photographs done. Now, like many a good photographer, the photographer actually posted a few of my friend's family photo shoots on her social media page. So as we all do, when we get a fantastic picture of ourselves, we share it around on social media. And she started scrolling through the photographer's website. And it got to the point where she recognized one of the ladies in the photos. Nothing new there. It's pretty common. They lived in the same area. But next to this person's name was a link to a business. And when my friend clicked on that link, she was greeted with not only pictures that appeared to have been taken in my store, but digging further, the whole vision of the business, the whole mission of the business, which I had actually written and posted on my website, the ethos around the whole business and what we built the business on, all of that had pretty much been copied word for word. Yep, it was heart-wrenching. Because what do? This was the first episode I'd ever had where somebody had taken something that I had built and I put my blood, sweat, and tears into it and just downright copied it. What was even worse was the fact that this person, the person who'd copied the core of my business and had pictures that they were taking in my store, was actually one of my staff. So why am I telling you this? Well, because up until this week, even though it was really traumatic when it happened and I went through a lot of pain and heartache and legal stuff, I'd actually completely forgotten about it. But this week, all those feelings, the anger, the humiliation that I'd been duped by someone I trusted and the embarrassment that I'd completely missed seeing this, all those feelings welled back up inside of me, and truth be told, probably outside as well. Okay, so what happened this week that made all of that stuff rise to the surface? Well, let me give you a little bit of a backstory. You know, if you listen to the podcast or you follow me on social media, that in February, I went to Traffic and Conversion, which is a really big digital marketing conference. There's around 7,000 people. I think there are something like 200 different sessions you can go to. It is huge. And this time around, I was focusing on sessions all about email marketing, e-commerce marketing, and copywriting, because those are the three things that I wanted our business to focus on in the next 12 months. And one of the sessions that I went to was a lady by the name of Laura Belgray, and her company is called Talking Shrimp. Now, you may not know who Laura Belgray is, but if you are in the business world, you've likely heard of a little lass called Marie Forleo. Yeah? B school? Of course you have. So Laura is not only Marie's BFF, but she is also the co-writer for Marie TV, and plus she co-authored the Copy Cure, the copywriting course that she and Marie formed together. But Laura is also a successful copywriter in her own right. She earns thousands of dollars for her writing, just for writing one article. So why is this important? Well, one of my biggest takeaways from traffic and conversion were that, one, when you are writing copy, when you're writing your newsletters, when you're trying to craft your social media posts, you have to be truly authentic. You have to have your own voice, your own business voice, in order to make that connection with your customers or potential customers. And two, you need to email more often than whatever it is you are doing right now. Chances are you aren't emailing anywhere near enough. And I know this was a hard one to deal with because a lot of people freak out that they're going to lose their subscribers. Now, if you're on my mailing list, you may have noticed that our emails are shorter, and nowadays they are packed full of what I like to call sassiness, and you're getting more of them. And truth is, we have had so many responses from the people on my mailing list telling me how much they're loving the new templates, the new layout, and of course, the new copy. But that is an episode for another day. Let me get back to the original story. So a couple of weeks ago, my team flew into Sydney and we spent some time at my house really analysing the issues that you guys have as independent retailers. Honestly, we sifted through email replies, we sifted through our support tickets, we sifted through our Facebook group, we discussed what comes up in onboarding calls, and the one thing that came up over and over again was this feeling of loneliness. And I'll admit that I am not immune to this. You may have caught my intro last week on Christina Nicholson's episode, very different from what I normally put out, but I confess that I do often feel lonely, even though I'm talking to people all day. So with that in mind, I sent out an email about being lonely in business. Now, we were pretty proud of it. My team and I thought long and hard about whether this was an area that we should dig into, but we did. We decided to go for it. I was really proud of it. It was relatable, and it was based on my own personal experiences and the feedback that I get when I'm talking to clients. And in that email, we even offered a couple of solutions. In fact, just on a side note, we got so many replies to that email, I think I'm going to jump in soon and record a whole episode about how I deal with loneliness in my own business. Even though I'm talking to people and I have a team, I'm not immune to it at all. Let's be truthful here. If you follow a lot of people who are in the entrepreneurial world, loneliness is not something that gets talked about a lot, right? So imagine my surprise when this week I opened an email from one of my competitors and bang, there it is. Whole email about what to do when you're lonely and you run a retail business. Now, I'm going to be honest here. A lot of my content gets copied. I see it time and time again. I've had some very big, let's call it run-ins with some big companies who have literally taken my copy and used it for creating their own downloads. And I often get emails from podcast listeners and my clients and retailers who've taken my course highlighting other people being my competitors who, let's call it, use my stuff as inspiration, right down to even using the name of my courses in their own copy to advertise their program. And here's the thing, I will admit, it is freaking frustrating. Honestly, it generally makes me super angry. And sometimes it makes me feel like, why the freaking hell do I even bother? My entire vision in my business is to give you, the listener out there on this podcast, the people I work with, the knowledge that you need to build a profitable retail business that doesn't burn you out. I am so passionate about this. And I have a team who are passionate about helping retailers just like you as well. We put so much energy into providing content, not just this podcast. We have free webinars and free downloads, and we have paid programs as well. We put so much energy into making that space available for people who want to grow their businesses and a place that you can hang out, that when I see that get copied, I just really struggle with what I should do next. So let me tell you exactly what I did do next. And I'm not saying that this is the right answer. One, I got angry. because this was a very random topic and not something that this company had ever talked about before. So I knew that it was blatant copying. Or the text was slightly different, but the whole premise, even the way that the email was written with my new Sal sassiness, they'd even copied that as well. So I was really angry. So the first thing I did was I actually walked upstairs to my husband Ed's office and stamped my foot and said, I can't believe they've done it again. This was something that was intimate to me. It was personal. Sending this email out was me bearing my feelings about the stuff that goes on in my business. And having somebody copy my feelings? Well, that's just freaking insane. You can't be somebody else. You can't take someone else's personal experiences and make them yours. So I was really angry. So I walked upstairs to Ed's office, stamped my foot, yelled that they'd done it again, and he just laughed at me. He just shook his head, and I'm not laughing ha-ha, but just said, love, you know they do this all the time. Why do you even let it bother you? So he was no help. So I came back downstairs to my office and I forwarded the email to Elizabeth on my team, who does a lot of our copywriting, and I just said in the subject line, what do you make of this? And she replied back, and let's say I'll censor this, but she was like, those bleep, they've pretty much stolen your entire concept. Okay, so why did I do this? Well, one, I just wanted the validation that I was not freaking crazy, because it's easy to see copying when that's what's in your head. So I just wanted some validation that I was not insane. And two, I just needed to get it out. I just needed to give myself 5 minutes to be angry, to be hurt, to be enraged about the fact that these were my experiences and I was pouring my heart out to the people on my email list who I do care about and who I have a connection with. And somebody had taken that away from me. Now, just as an aside, I've been watching Catfish lately. I felt like I'd been catfished, even though I know it's not the same kind of thing, but I felt like someone had taken my life and used it to build their own business. Does that even make sense? So, how do I actually deal with copycats? Now you know how they affect me. How do I deal with them? Well, first off, is I actually give myself a few minutes to feel those emotions. Not a whole day, not even half a day, but maybe just 5 or 10 minutes to actually let that whole thing sit with me and really dig deep about what is it that has got me angry. Is it just the fact that they copied? Well, in this case, no. It was the fact that they'd taken my experiences and they were trying to use that. So for me, what was most upsetting was the fact that they had actually impinged on my own feelings, on my connection point with my clients, with my customers, with my followers, and that they were basically just rehashing my experiences to fill their content calendar. So if this happens to you, you by all means are allowed to have some time to just be angry, to be annoyed, to be frustrated, to shout and scream and stamp your feet. You are 100% allowed to do that. I'm giving you permission to be angry. That is 100% normal. But here's the thing. Those people copying you, when you let them make you feel this way, yeah, you can express those emotions for a couple of minutes. But if you let this sit with you, if you let it fester, if you let it upset you for the next couple of hours, for the next day, for the next week, for the next month, you're actually giving them the power. Because it's not affecting them that you're at home as mad as hell. It's not affecting them that you're so angry that you want to scream and shout and do whatever it is you do when you get angry. The person who's copying you, they're sitting at home. They're scrolling through Facebook. They're probably checking out a whole bunch of other social media profiles. They're living their lives and they're completely oblivious to how you are feeling. It is not affecting them at all. Going back to that catfish metaphor, if you've ever watched the show, you know when Neve and Max confront the person who's been using the fake profile, quite often they just have no concept about how what they're doing has hurt somebody else. So when you continue to let this anger and frustration and negativity fill your life, all that's happening is you're letting them take control of your life and they don't even know it. Does this even make sense? So I'm here to tell you that it's time to reclaim that power. It is time for you to control your life and let it be amazing. Let it be awesome. So let's jump into what you should do when you find someone is copying you. Now, I haven't talked about this before because I'll admit when there are challenges in your business, we don't like to share them. You don't want to be seen as weak or not being in control of your business. So I'm going to give you the tools that you need right now, next time somebody is copying you, to reclaim your power and take control back of your life. So the first one is to understand that there really isn't any new content. People are always going to copy. And this is a big reality check because in this digital day and age, there isn't anything new to talk about. Inside the Retail Academy this month, we're talking about how you can reuse your existing content. And then just this morning, I got an email from Laura Belgrave from Talking Shrimp talking about, you guessed it, reusing content. Now, was she copying me? Could she somehow see what was inside of my Retail Academy? Did she understand what my content calendar looked like? Heck no. Well, firstly, she serves a completely different audience. And that's going to happen a lot. And if you're drawing inspiration from other people, try and get it from a different audience. Try and take the concept, but make it your own. Make it connect with you. Don't just recycle somebody else's feelings or someone else's content. But secondly, whilst the topic was the same, while we were talking about reusing content and she was talking about reusing content, the story inside was completely her own. She was talking about how walking down a New York street, she was listening to this elderly couple talk about some medication or something along those lines. Whilst we just coincidentally happened to be talking about the same topic, the emails were nothing alike. And thirdly, I doubt that she's subscribing to my email list for content ideas. She's a pretty well-respected and highly paid copywriter. She doesn't need to be on my email list for content ideas. So the trick here is understanding when someone is copying you versus when they just happen to be talking about the same topic. That is super important. And sometimes you may even find that the stories are going to be somewhat similar. But you will know in your heart of hearts if someone has been copying you, if they're copying your voice, if they're copying your whole ethos for your brand. And when that happens, then this is my next tip. The number 2 thing that you should do when you find that someone is copying you is understand that no one else can be you. It is just too freaking exhausting. Now, they say that imitation is the highest form of flattery. And you know that to connect with your customers, you need to have a voice. Even if it's not your voice, it's your brand's voice. And you need to be showing your customers time and time again how you are different. Why should people shop with you? So let me give you an example. You know that I'm a tea drinker, right? I am not a fan of coffee. I love the smell of it, but when it comes to drinking it, not my favorite thing in the world. And I was recently reading that Twinings. So if you're a tea lover like me and you understand tea, Twinings is probably the most well-known brand in the whole world. They just recently celebrated their 300th anniversary. In fact, their logo is the oldest commercial logo still in use. That's pretty impressive, right? Back in 1837, they became the official tea stockist to the royal family. Now, do you think in those 300 years that they've had a few copycats along the way? Yeah. Of course they did. But they were true to their brand. They were true to their ethos. And Tom Twining's original vision, first started his business, he was in between coffee houses. And tea was a very new thing and it was very, very expensive. And so Tom's whole business was built on the fact that fresh ideas and unusual promotional twists were what keep a business alive. And the difference at his store, at Tom's store, was the fact that he sold tea instead of coffee. So he had a really big point of difference. So Twinings still keeps that ethos in their business. Fresh ideas and unusual promotional twists. They have partnered up with people, big celebrities like Nicole Kidman, to design tea packets. They are always thinking of ways to make their business stand out. Now, if you're a rival, it takes a lot of energy to do that. It takes a lot of energy to be ahead of your competition and stand out with something different. Research and development takes a lot of money and it takes a lot of energy. But for you, being you is the easiest thing in the world. And no one else can do that without putting in a lot of that time and energy and probably a lot of money as well. And number 2 thing to do when somebody is copying you is to keep being you 100% authentically. Okay, number 3. That one's a little bit airy-fairy. So let's jump into the next one, which is to trademark your stuff. Now let me just jump in really quickly here and say that registering a business name is not the same as trademarking something. And trademarks apply in the country that you have bought them for. So if you have not applied for a worldwide trademark, your trademark is only relevant in the country that you've registered it in. Sure, you may have some legal standing further down the track if someone is trying to trademark it in a different country. Something that I see time and time again is retailers who think that just because they bought a URL or they registered a business name, they think that nobody else can use that name. So just be perfectly aware that a trademark is a very different thing to a business name, and generally it's a little bit more expensive and it does take a long time. So for example, whilst I own the domain Scale Your Store, I also have trademarks pending in both the US and Australia, which is where my 2 biggest customer bases are, for Scale Your Store. Now here's the other thing. Trademarks have classes. So I think in Australia we have about 25 different classes. And think of those classes as things like clothing or a retail store or an educational resource. So even though I have my trademark pending for Scale Your Store, it is only in the class for educational resources. I think that's what it's called. So if someone wanted to open a shop called Scale Your Store, they 100% can. They could even register that trademark. The only way that you're going to get coverage is to cover yourself in all the classes. But you have to be able to justify why you're registering in that class. Now, we actually have a whole episode, so I'm not going to get into it too much. And I'll make sure that I link to that episode about how you go about trademarking your stuff. But the reason that you want to do this, the reason you want to go to this expense and the time, it takes probably around 12 months to get your trademark put through either in the US or Australia, is because you are legally covered if somebody tries to copy you or if somebody starts to use your business name or your logo inside of their advertising or their marketing. Now, just as an aside here, I want you to be aware that when you publish original content on your website, so if you write a blog, for example, or your product descriptions, when you write those, if you've created a download or a cheat sheet, you automatically have copyright attributed to you. You don't have to do anything to get copyright for written material. That applies to pictures as well. So if you find that somebody has copied your work, whether it's your pictures or your text or your digital work, what do? Well, first off, you have to start with a letter or an email to the person who's using your material. It might feel easier just to call the lawyers in because you want to avoid confrontation, but honestly, the easiest way is to send a letter or an email or a DM to the person and ask them to stop using it. Tell them that it's your copyright. Usually, that's enough. But if they continue to use your material, then you have several options, including having a solicitor draw up a cease and desist letter. Or if the person is using your copyrighted content on a website, you can report the offender to their web host, and you can actually also go online and fill in a takedown form. So we've actually had an episode on that as well. So I'm going to link to both of those in the show note, one about trademarking and the other one about copywriting. And that's what I had to do with that staff member. I had my solicitor draw up a cease and desist and a takedown letter, and I handed it to her on the day that she came into work. I took her keys, I told her that she was fired, I had a termination letter, and I had the legal letter there as well. And by 5 o'clock that afternoon, it was all gone. So sometimes the easiest and cheapest way to do it is just to send out an email or a letter to the person. Now, it doesn't always work. I've had situations where that hasn't worked, but it's a great place to start. And it's not going to cost you a cent. At the end of the day, when you're being copied, you should take some kind of happiness away from it, because it means that the person who's copying from you is highly likely to be threatened by how successful you are. Now, you may not feel successful. You may feel like you're just a small fish in a big pond. But when somebody is copying you, it's because they can't think of their own content, and they're looking at you as the inspiration, as the leader in the field to base their own content on. So know that if someone is copying from you, they're likely to be highly jealous of what you're doing in business. They clearly think that you're successful, because why else would they want to take your stuff and use it? And 3, they're probably not that smart. If they can't come up with their own content, if they have to steal from you or copy from you, you know that you're already providing a better service, a better product, and they're always going to be 2 steps behind. If they're not being themselves, if they're not creating their own stuff, if they're copying from you, they're never going to be as good as you are. Now, what do you do if you've been the copier? What do you do if you're the one, now that you've listened to this episode, you think, actually, I do feel like I kind of maybe took my inspiration a little bit too far? Well, it is time to let your inner brand out, your inner voice out. You need to be you 1000%. And you can do this with video, with Facebook Lives, with a different style of photo, with blog posts and reviews to build your brand. You need to secure your position in the market based on what you're great at, what you believe in, what you want your customers to think and feel about you. And you need to speak to your customers in a way that is truly authentic to your brand. Now, if you've been following me for a while, you know that I cuss quite a bit, but my competitors don't. I have no problems sending out a newsletter that may have a typo or two, because for me, the story is in there. And if you are so hung up on they're being spelled incorrectly, maybe I'm not the right person for you. Maybe I'm not the person that you want to hang out with. In fact, the first email that you get from me pretty much says, hey, this is the kind of person I am. And if you don't like it, I am 100% okay with you pressing unsubscribe now, because I don't want to waste your time. I don't want to fill your inbox with stuff if you don't want to read it, if you don't want to hang out with me. And you should feel okay about that yourself. You should feel okay with just attracting the people who love you for you, because you can have a smaller customer base that are 100% engaged and thoroughly love what you do and why you do it and what you sell. And they're always going to buy more than the people who just don't give a crap. At the end of the day, if someone is copying from you, you need to learn how to move on. You do have to be able to remove yourself from the situation and know that it is impossible for that person to be you. It is impossible for them to keep it up forever. So be unique, own your brand voice, and you'll blitz your competition by being the first and the best to add value for your customers. Thanks so much for being with me on this episode today. I hope you've taken a little bit of solace knowing that I too can 100% be affected by copiers. I'm learning to let it pass me by, but I do give myself that permission, just those few minutes, to feel whatever it is I want to feel. And then I let them go, because I don't want my competitors having the power over my life. Wherever you are in the world. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Feel free to leave a review and let me know what you think, and I will chat with you next week. Bye. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of the Bringing Business to Retail podcast. You can find all of the show notes over at selenaknight.com. If you found something that you heard today particularly useful, I'd love it if you could leave me a review on iTunes or Stitcher. And of course, feel free to share this episode with someone that you think could benefit by listening to it. Want more retail biz strategies? You can watch the Bringing Business to Retail TV show, where each week I'll answer a question or provide you with a simple, actionable retail biz strategy that you can implement in your business right away. If you have a question or a guest, I'd love to hear from you. Drop my team an email at podcast@selenaknight.com, and I'll see you on the next episode. Have a great week.